Hello, beautiful soul. My name is Yulia, and I'm the voice of the podcast Love to Heal. This podcast outlines my journey from atheism to Judaism, exploring spirituality from diverse perspectives. It is my hope that my journey will inspire others to embark on their own adventure of self-discovery and spiritual growth. In the previous episode, I spoke about my Jewish adventures in Stockholm, Sweden. Today, the adventure continues to Bergen and Oslo, Norway. So we flew from Stockholm to Bergen, which is just 1 hour flight. It was a rainy, chilly June day, unfortunately. At some point, I think it got as low as 55 degrees. And it was quite windy and, unpleasant. But that didn't stop us from exploring the city, of course. So after checking into our hotel, we took a train to the city. Now, right away, what I noticed in the public transport was that the population of, this was Bergen, but Norway in general, I will have found out later on, is very diverse, as opposed to Denmark and Sweden, where there are some immigrants. Yes, we did see some, but in Norway, it felt like it was mostly immigrants from all kinds of different countries. So just even riding the train, I saw people of all races and colors, and I'm assuming different faiths. But above all, we did see a lot of Muslims. There were many balconies of apartment buildings that displayed Palestinian flags. And the more we explored the city, the more obvious the country's anti-Israel stance became. For example, in one of the underground pedestrian crossings, my kids noticed a huge colorful graffiti, and it was of this scary looking, I couldn't even tell if it was a man or a monster, but that, let's say, man had a big star of David in one of his eyes, which was really bizarre. But that Jewish star was crossed out with black paint, to my kids' surprise, but of course not to mine. Similarly to the other Scandinavian countries that we had visited prior, we did not find really any kosher food options. So again, we had to limit ourselves to either vegetarian dishes or do our best not to mix dairy with meat, and obviously skip on the abundant seafood available all around the city, because Bergen is a port city, so it's all about seafood. I won't lie, it's not easy to change your life habits, such as that of food preferences, as an adult. Before becoming observant, my husband and I considered ourselves foodies, which means we would travel the world trying all kinds of fancy and exotic local dishes. There literally were no limits because my husband and I, we don't have any food allergies, so we were open to trying anything and everything. Like when I was in Mexico, for example, I ate chapulines, which are the grasshoppers. Or when I was in South Korea, I ate some silk worms or something like that. So, I mean, we tried everything. But I am actually convinced that having limits to what you eat and what you do in general, just having limits, is not only better for our physical health, but most importantly for our spiritual health, which of course is all interrelated anyway. So when we went to the famous fish market in Bergen in Norway, we admired all the colorful, crazy sea creatures, some of which I don't even think I had seen before, but we were absolutely fine not eating them. Because if you do stick to the kosher rules, you can only eat fish with scales and fins, so none of the, oysters, nothing like octopus or any other kinds of sea creatures that don't have fins and scales. My husband jokes that we went ahead and created for ourselves an allergy of sorts. Because this is our choice, right? We chose to observe kosher, so we are consciously limiting ourselves. Many people out there can't have gluten or dairy or nuts. We could have it all, and yet we chose to limit ourselves. Well, I strongly believe that if you don't limit yourself, God will limit you. So it's better to take matters into your own hands and be proactive rather than later cry about limitations that were decided for you. I mean, look around. There are more allergies than ever before. Why? Because the more choices we have, the more availability of foods we have, the more affordable foods are, the more people go crazy and lose control. While before, people would be satisfied with a meal consisting of, I don't know, porridge or soup and bread. Now they can have anything their soul desires. And of course, naturally, problems such as obesity, diabetes, GI issues, all this arises. So with allergies popping up, at least people can control themselves to an extent. In terms of me and my personal choice to limit myself, I'll tell you, I have a sweet tooth. And I used to find it very hard to control myself when it came to sweets. If I saw chocolate or anything with chocolate in front of me, I'd have to have it. I would literally lose control. Now that I'm observing the kosher law of not mixing dairy and meat, for example, do you know how many times I've wanted to finish off my meaty meal with whatever sweets I could find? But because I'm observing commandments for God, I feel that I have a huge responsibility not to let him down. And no matter how attractive a dessert looks, if it has some dairy in it, which most desserts do, I put it down. And I'm noticing that more and more I'm able to have control of myself, of my desires. And actually, that makes me very happy because now I'm becoming less and less dependent on the earthly things and more so on the spiritual, which is great because we know that earthly things only provide temporary pleasure, and sometimes they're even detrimental to our health, while spiritual things, well, they provide everlasting pleasure and joy. So, back to my travels. Overall, the city of Bergen is very charming and picturesque. In the Nordic culture, trolls are a big part of Norse mythology, and you can find interpretations of these creatures all around the city, from gift shops to parks to random street art. Norse paganism, by the way, is a reconstruction of the pre-Christian religious beliefs and practices of Scandinavia. Perhaps you're familiar with some of the gods of this mythology, like Thor, the god of thunder, that has become so popular thanks to the Marvel Comics movies. The funny thing here is that being Jewish, I'm, of course, a monotheist, right? I believe in one God. But for some reason, pagan gods made their way from Scandinavia into our lives, all the way in Cleveland, Ohio. Because a few days after our return, we adopted a dog, which you might have heard making noise in my previous episode. But yeah, we adopted a dog whose name is Loki, who in Norse mythology is described as a trickster god, like a god of mischief. And I just can't help but laugh about it and the irony of life. So, if you decide to go to Bergen one day, I highly recommend taking a cruise through the fjords, which are these long, narrow, deep inlets of the sea with steep sides formed by glacial erosion. The views are truly breathtaking. In addition, the forests of Norway are seriously out of this world. You will find many parks for hiking, kayaking, and many other outdoor activities. The park that we went to was the Troll Forest. Yes, there are trolls in the forest, not real ones, of course, but they do have many figures carved out of wood that our kids had a blast searching for and taking pictures with. So if you do go with kids, I feel like this is a must. To get to this park, which is located high up on Mount Floyen, you can take the famous funicular from the fish market, which takes like a good 8 minutes to reach the top of the mountain. And then from the mountain, you will be able to enjoy unparalleled views of the port city, which was really beautiful. A great opportunity to take pictures and selfies and all that. After exploring the Troll Forest, which is where basically all the tourist activities are, they have kids' playgrounds and gift shops, cafes, etc. Once we were kind of done with this area, we decided to go a little deeper into the woods to explore. When we just caught a glimpse of the towering trees covered in vibrant green moss, and we heard the soft sounds of faraway creeks, it was like the forest was calling us. We couldn't pass on the opportunity, obviously, to see Norway's natural landscape. Now, we were completely unprepared for any type of hike. I was wearing my perfectly white sneakers and jeans, and the rest of my family was in a similar situation, but we didn't care. We just started climbing up the hills. The amount of moss everywhere, not only on trees or around trees, but basically imagine instead of grass, just plain instead of grass, you see moss everywhere. And it was striking. It felt like we were walking on a huge velvety green carpet that sprawled all over the mountains. We even had the urge to take our shoes off and run around barefoot because it was so soft to the touch. I had never seen anything like it. We all agreed that we had been transported into a fairyland, and it really felt like we would see a troll or a fairy just appear at any moment. It was really nice. The beauty of the forest, it kept drawing us in, and so we kept on walking, trying to remember the path we took so we could come back in a timely fashion. There are paved trails in this park, of course, but we always choose to go off the beaten path. So we kind of wandered like straight through the forest, no pavement or anything. And like I said, it was really lovely just walking on that beautiful moss. And eventually we made it to a lake where you could kayak for free. So, of course, we did that as well, which was really nice. The lake was beautiful. And several hours passed. We didn't even realize how much time had passed. Had we been more prepared, like packed snacks and worn different clothing, we probably would have continued exploring, but kids were getting hungry and it was time to go. So, by the way, I do want to mention that in the summer, the sun in the Scandinavian countries sets really late, well after 10 p.m., so people can enjoy the trails well into the night. Just enjoy nature. And people do that a lot. The locals, they do take advantage of that beautiful nature. So after spending a couple of chilly, rainy days in Bergen, we flew to Oslo, the capital of Norway. And here, honestly, I don't think there was any moment in time where I didn't see women wearing, the hijab, being covered from head to toe with the hijab and the robe. And although they were, of course, very peaceful and, they live there, it's their country now, but it didn't make me feel welcome in the city or the country as a whole. What I didn't know and what I soon found out was that Norway actually has very strong relationship with Palestine, and it's rooted in a long history of diplomatic engagement and a commitment to the two-state solution. And I also didn't know that Norway formally recognized the state of Palestine in 2024. And they have accepted and continue to accept refugees from Palestine. So that, of course, explained the Palestinian flags everywhere, as well as the abundant anti-Israeli graffiti. I mean, we literally saw stickers and signs and writings on basically every wall of a building, every sidewalk, even benches at bus stations. They all had something written against Israel or pro-Palestine and pro-Gaza. Not gonna lie, I didn't feel the safest in Oslo. I'm sure nothing would have happened if I was openly Jewish. I don't dress Orthodox, and I didn't, wear any jewelry with a Star of David or something on it. So obviously people didn't know that I was Jewish. I don't know. I don't know if anything would have happened had I looked different. But I didn't feel the safest there. To be honest, this whole situation kind of ruined my mood more than anything. We only had a couple days in Oslo, and we wanted to make the best of it. So we tried to do our best to focus on the positive. And actually, I did find one sticker at a bus stop on a bench that had an Israeli flag, and then it said something like, Israel will not win, or something like that. But then the not part was covered with another Israeli sticker. So instead it read, Israel will win. So that made me really happy, and I actually even took a picture of it, just reminding myself that there are many people who are pro-Israel, who are not anti-Semites, and that made me feel good. And also, in Scandinavia, there's a chain of cafes that is really popular. It's called Joe and the Juice. And we went to one of these cafes in Norway, and my husband read about it a little bit, and it turns out that they're actually pro-Israeli. They have a lot of investment in Israel, and people in the past year or so have been protesting them in Scandinavia because they're pro-Israeli. But I wouldn't say that they're doing badly in business there. The cafes are everywhere, almost like on every street. It's almost like a Starbucks, because they sell coffees and smoothies and sandwiches, and there were always many people eating there, drinking coffee. So it doesn't look like the protests did any damage to them. But it was also nice to know that a big company like that is pro-Israel, and they're doing well in Scandinavia. As far as doing Jewish things on this trip, I had reached out earlier to the synagogue of Oslo, but unfortunately they were closed for the summer, which I found kind of strange. But they were only open on Shabbat, which we would miss because we were flying out on Thursday. So we did not get to visit the Oslo synagogue, but it looked really pretty in pictures. The architecture of it looked really interesting and different from the other synagogues that we saw in Denmark and Sweden. So I was kind of bummed that we couldn't go to it. And as far as Chabad goes, if I understood correctly, most of the programming is actually virtual, and it's combined for members of Chabad in Denmark, Finland, Iceland, Norway, and Sweden. The website information wasn't exactly straightforward, and there wasn't like a specific address for the Chabad in Norway. So unfortunately, we did not get to visit the Chabad house in Norway either. We ended up not doing a lot of Jewish things, but one other thing that I do want to mention, how we know that there still is a presence of a Jewish community in Norway is, for example, we saw posters of Fiddler on the Roof coming to Norway. And I thought that was really sweet. At first, I wasn't sure if it was Fiddler on the Roof because everything was written in their language. But judging by the pictures of Tevye and his wife, and just something about the poster that spoke Fiddler on the Roof to me, and then my husband used the translation option in the phone camera, and we did translate it, and it did say Fiddler on the Roof. So I thought that was really cool that people would go to see that in Norway, and it would be popular enough for this troupe to come to their theater. Now, other places of interest on our itinerary included 2 sculpture parks. Scandinavians are really into sculptures. You will find sculptures all around different cities. So we were kind of interested to see what these parks were about, especially that we wanted to spend more time outdoors. We didn't feel like going to a museum. So we thought, we'll check that out. And we headed to the first one. It turned out to be a huge park with paved trails, and the sculptures were scattered all across this huge park. Some were easily visible and accessible right from the trails, while others were hidden or tucked away far from the trails. So if you were to see all the sculptures, you'd probably need like a solid 2-3 hours, I think, to walk that huge territory, which we did not expect. We didn't see probably not even half of the sculptures, to be honest, but the ones we did see were plenty for us. Let me explain why. Norwegian culture, perhaps this is a European thing, I'm sure it's a European thing, but they're very liberal and open about sexuality. There's no shame in the human body and even in the sexual relations. So, upon entering the park, be prepared to see sculptures of, for example, a naked man pleasuring a naked woman orally, or you will see a huge yellow male organ propped on the ground with the testicles, or you will see a bronze sculpture of a woman squatting with her pants off, taking a wee. And there's actually like a little fountain under her, so it actually looks like she's peeing. And this is all in a public park. I couldn't believe it. We walked swiftly past these sculptures, and I tried to avoid making conversation with my kids. We decided to get a little bit away from these sculptures, and we ended up on a little trail, not a paved trail, just like a dirt little road trail. And we thought we'll go see some nature, but on the road we discovered a whole wall, or it's not really a wall. It's kind of like set into a mountain, I suppose, but it was like a wall of screens, of TVs, mounted into this rock formation that transmitted images and footage of a completely naked woman. Perhaps she is a famous artist like Marina Abramovich. I don't know. I didn't stay long enough to read about it. But I just didn't appreciate all the nudity that my kids were exposed to. Here I am teaching them about modesty. And this trip to Scandinavia, well, hopefully it didn't ruin my attempts to instill in my children a sense of humility. I mean, back home, of course, here in Ohio, it's definitely more conservative than Europe. But yeah, I just didn't want them to think that it's normal to see naked people everywhere, because it's not. So the following day, we visited another sculpture park. This one was called Vigilant Park, which I have to say is very impressive. Very impressive. It's humongous and it features hundreds upon hundreds of sculptures by just one artist. His last name is Vigilant. That's why it's called like that, the park, after him. The park also features a lake with swans and thousands of colorful roses everywhere. So it is beautiful, very, very beautiful. However, every single sculpture is of a naked person. Women, men, children. In a nutshell, this is Norway. It's very liberal and a little perverted, or a lot. Oh gosh, if you'd like to see photos from this trip, please go to my Instagram or TikTok at Love to Heal Podcast. I didn't post a lot of pictures from these parks, but you will see some other interesting tourist attractions. If you're Jewish and looking to travel to Scandinavia, just know that it is not the most Jew-loving place on earth. I'll tell you one more thing. When I posted on TikTok videos from synagogues and Jewish museums in Scandinavia, I received countless, and I mean countless, hateful comments. I won't even repeat any of them. They were dreadful. They were so horrific. At first, I started to tear up because I felt like the whole world was against me. But then I turned off the notifications from TikTok and I felt more at peace that way. And I also realized that many people were kind enough to defend me and answer those comments on my behalf. But they were saying that there's a difference between being Jewish and being a Zionist. They were saying that my posts were not Zionists in nature, that there was no reason to attack me because I was a Jew. But I'm sorry, what kind of a Jew is not a Zionist? Of course I'm a Zionist. Jews who are not Zionists must be confused about Judaism overall. Our right to dwell in Israel and to strongly protect ourselves, not only in Israel, but everywhere in the world, comes directly from God, creator of heaven and earth. Jews must not see the connection and claim to the land of Israel as a gift of the nations of the world. No, that's ridiculous. And they should not see it as something conferred upon them by the United Nations. Instead, Jews must see the land of Israel and our right to live there as God's covenantal agreement with our forefather Abraham, as is written clearly in the Torah, which is a holy book not only for the Jews, but also for Christians and Muslims. As you can see, this topic really gets me going, and I could keep on going, but there's one more thing that I wanted to share with you, and this is about our flight from Oslo to JFK. I do want to mention that nothing specifically intriguing occurred on this trip, unlike the episode where I talk about our Caribbean cruise where our passports were stolen, or our crazy adventures in Argentina. So this trip was really just calm and tranquil. Nothing overly exciting happened, which I'm grateful for. I had Hashem with me in my heart and my soul every moment of every day. I was so thankful for every experience, for being with my family, being safe, having fun. But one little thing did happen at the very end, which you could say, I suppose, tested my faith a little bit. So basically what happened was we had purchased our flight through a Scandinavian budget airline. Yes, they have those too, similar to Spirit and Frontier. And when it was time to check in, we realized that we could not do it online, which, normally we do it 24, 48 hours ahead of time on our phone. But this one app, this airline would not allow it. We would have to go to the airport to do that. We also noticed that we were not assigned any seats, which was strange for an international flight, especially that we had bought our tickets well in advance, like half a year or more in advance. So when we got to the airport, we got there nice and early. We went to check in, and we were told that we would get our seat assignment at the gate, which had never happened to us before and was also very suspicious. Once we got to the gate, we were amongst the first ones in line, and we waited and waited until a representative from the airline arrived. When they arrived and scanned our ticket, they told us to wait on the side to see if they would have any seats for us because the flight was very overbooked. I was startled at this point because, I have 4 people traveling with, 2 little kids. We, like I said, had booked well in advance. Why were we not assigned any seats? That's crazy. So we started to get a little nervous because it didn't seem like a whole lot of fun to have to spend the night in Oslo, trying to figure out where and how to fly out the next day. If there even was a flight the following day, we weren't even sure. And then, we would have to hope that there's 4 seats on the next plane, etc. So we started to get a little nervous. We talked to the manager. He said he would do what he could, but again, told us just to stand by and wait. So we stood by as a never-ending line of passengers was going past us. We figured there's no way that we could get 4 seats on this obviously way overbooked flight. While standing there and waiting, I kept telling myself that whatever God's plan is, I'm okay with it. The following morning, we were planning to visit the Ohel, the burial site of the Rebbe in Queens, New York, which I had been waiting for a long time to do that. So I figured, okay, if we miss that, maybe it means that we're not ready yet to go to this magical spiritual place, and it would be okay. I would be fine to wait for another opportunity. We don't go to New York that often, but I'm sure we could make it work, I've told myself. And the more that I kept telling myself that everything is in God's hands, everything is God's will, the calmer I became. And soon enough, the manager called us over and provided us with the tickets that had assigned seats on them. And the end of the line, we couldn't even still see the end of the line. So somehow they decided, I suppose, not to wait until they set everybody on the airplane. And they gave us 4 great seats. We all sat together. It was wonderful. It all worked out in the end. And once again, I was reminded of how important it is to trust God. Because had we not left for New York that day, there must have been a reason for that, right? Nothing happens just because. So either way, had we stayed or had we left, I would have been okay with it. That's what I told myself, and now I can see again that I should always trust God no matter what. But it all worked out. And by the way, make sure to listen to the episode after this one in which I tell you all about the Ohel, which really is a magical oasis. I will leave you today with a quote by the Rebbe on the topic of maintaining faith. And I will add also that Israel will survive and prosper. The Jews are a rising lion, and once awakened, no master will ever tame us. Enjoy, and until next time. When the enemy nations of the world see true Jewish strength, not strength that emanates from the strength and might of my hand, but strength that comes from true faith in God Almighty, then they will dissipate on their own and not even approach to make war.